r/Tales from Tech Support. I'm the temp and you will comply. After my post yesterday, I had a few users asking to hear about the story I'd alluded to at the end. This takes place during a 3-month temp role I held working internal tech support for a wealthy international tech company. During my brief time there, one project I implemented was rolling all 400 employees in my office building from an old MDM, Mobile Device Manager, to the new EMM, Enterprise Mobility Manager. For those unaware, an EMM-MDM allows a company to oversee every aspect of their assets. This could be from enforcing HDD encryption, restricting web traffic, pushing out new company apps, forcing software updates, wiping the asset remotely, seeing what programs are being used, or even tracking the device's physical location. It also handled the renewal of our network certificates, something that tended to break with our old MDM. Wi-Fi Ethernet certs are necessary to even access the internet from inside our office building. So, if some bimbo off the street somehow made it past multiple security checkpoints and physically plugged into an office network jack, he wouldn't see squat. Unless you had an active certificate, you were completely stonewalled. Back to the forced compliance. For this project, I needed to meet face-to-face, one-on-one, with the roughly 300 employees that weren't yet on the new MDM. They had to plug into a very specific, unlocked port behind my desk, so I could make a few system changes. This would take anywhere from 7 minutes to 20 minutes for the ones that had trouble. To organize this, I created sign-up sheets in our online community with hundreds of 20-minute blocks staggered every 10 minutes, across a couple weeks, and had employees sign up at whatever time worked best for them. Everyone was contacted via a batch of individual support tickets that I would eventually need to individually close. They were also contacted via internal messenger or other methods for follow-up. Most everyone registered for a time slot, and over the next 2 weeks, I was able to manually enroll hundreds of users in our new EMM. These interactions were my bread and butter, allowing me to single-handedly raise my team's KPI that quarter. Unfortunately, some employees were too busy, i.e. important, to respond, and a few even missed their scheduled appointments. Most of them were higher up in the company and could have easily terminated me, a lowly temp, if they were feeling temperamental that day. So, with my time frame on the project coming to a close, I got creative. Going into the old MDM software, I pulled up a few of the users who were ghosting me and experimented on one by expiring their network certificates. Not 10 minutes later, that impossible to reach employee walked up to our help desk, as he was no longer able to access the internet. Sure, I'd be glad to take a look at that connectivity issue for you, as there was already a certificate expiry issue with the old MDM. No one found their sudden loss of internet questionable, just annoying. More so, once they showed up for support, a member of my team took it upon themselves to enroll the employee in the new EMM. This both fixed the user's problem and allowed my team to confidently say, "This shouldn't happen again with our new software." In the end, the only employees not enrolled were all on PTO or business trips at the time. Once they got back from vacation and realized they couldn't get on the Wi-Fi, they would need to swing by for support anyway. Win-win. I never told anyone what I had done, as I wasn't keen to get reprimanded had an employee lost a sale from my actions. TLDR. Important employees are too busy for a short one-on-one meeting with me, so I decide to see how they like working without internet access. If you've yet to read it, here is my story about catching a thief within the same company. the day an overachieving temp became a detective to catch company theft. A few moons back, I worked a temp support desk role for a multi-billion-dollar tech company. Basically, I was covering for another employee's planned 3-month paid leave. When I wasn't responding to countless tickets or wreaking havoc in Active Directory. Part of my role involved asset management, including MDM-DEP enrollment of hundreds of brand new assets each month, mostly laptops, phones, tablets, etc. Near the end of my short stint with this amazing company, I took it upon myself to inventory the build room and clean up their hodgepodge of databases. Surprisingly, I was able to account for every MacBook listed, with the exception of one. I confirmed it wasn't out in the recent batch of repairs and should have definitely been on a shelf or in a cupboard. Checked again. No, not there. Odd. So, to appease my OCD and craving for mystery, I decided to investigate. Using our help desk ticket system, I could see that a company contractor, let's call him Mr. Business, had the asset assigned to him 1 year prior. I reached out via messaging, where Mr. Business stated that the MacBook didn't work for his software and he'd returned it to our service desk the year prior. While this story lined up with our inventory database, it didn't explain why the asset had never been reassigned and was simply marked as retired the entirety of last year. Very odd. Well, more digging for me. With the help of our access management tool, I had far too many admin privileges as a temp. I was able to determine that this missing laptop was accessed about 6 months after it had supposedly been returned to inventory. I could see what programs were used at that time, how long the laptop had been booted, and what networks were connected. The user whom had signed in at boot with his credentials was also logged. Mr. Business. He booted it again a few days later, for only a few minutes, making it easy to guess the MacBook had been wiped at that time. Pulling up our network logs, I determined that this asset had not pinged our internal network for around 10 months, which correlated with the unknown IP he had logged. So, the picture painted was this: Mr. Business, who made well into 6 figures, borrowed a laptop that, for whatever reason, he failed to return. Instead, he decided to risk his career, well, at least his honor, by lying about it and bringing the MacBook home with him where it sat undisturbed for 6 months. Like a grade A genius, he booted it, connected it to his home Wi-Fi, and used it for 1 day before wiping its memory. Mr. Business was in the clear, until months later, a brown-nosed kid decided to be an overachiever in a temp role and clean up a few databases, to leave a good impression. I ended up compiling some irrefutable proof this guy was guilty. No clue what came from it or if Mr. Business even still works for this company. I passed on what I'd found to my boss and knew better than to ask questions about how it was handled. Wasn't my place. Anticlimactic, I know. Thanks for reading anyway. TLDR. A well-paid businessman stole a company laptop, then lied to myself and others about stealing it. Bad businessman. Bad. This actually reminds me of another solid story with this same temp job, where I revoked high-level users' network access so they'd schedule meetings for me to fix their computers. Fun times. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more Reddit content.